Got the lovely Kevin with us again today. He has got no toys for us to play with. Oh, look, see, you've disappointed everybody. It's all right, Kevin, it's all right, it's all right. Kevin is going to talk to us today about shamanism and actually what is a shaman. So how wonderful is that going to be? Without further ado, sir, I'm going to hand over to you. I'm being called to the back there. We've got a bit of a problem on our technical side.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Much appreciated. Once again, excuse me for sitting down, but I've got a slight problem with an ankle at the moment, so me standing up is a bit of a complication for anything too long. Can everyone hear me okay, first of all? The idea of today come about from a few questions asked last time I was here. What is a shaman? So I'm a practicing shaman. I've been for many, many years. Technically, a shaman is just someone who has been trained to work with all types of spirit. Where most of you is trained to work with humanoid spirits, that is probably the starting point. We work with everything, as I've presented sometimes in the past here. We work with the four elements, which is earth, air, fire and water. Each of those have a spiritual presence. Outside there, the trees, the ground, has a spiritual presence. Most buildings have got a spiritual presence. It's being able to recognise that and work with that. So a shaman technically is someone who can work with all spirits. A shaman is there to work for the good of the community. A shaman is someone that the community is to. Shamans are also healers, so normally you'll be trained in quite a few of the healing arts, in different crystal work and OP and shamanic work, as I've shown here before, with drums and rattles and other tools we work with. But most of the work as a shaman is being a communicator on behalf of the community. So the community can come to the shaman and ask if there's anything they've got a problem that may be spiritual based. How can the shaman work? The shaman can make blessings, offerings. There's traditional offerings that are done to actually appease spirit. We reason with spirit. We put blessings. We put healings on different things. Not only people, it's the land and areas. A fair part of shamanic work is to deal with spirit who are not behaving themselves. So quite often we are called upon where there's problems with a spiritual presence somewhere, and it may be affecting the occupants of that property or building. So how do we actually go about working with, which is quite strange sometimes, because we always think every spirit is a positive spirit and a lovely spirit and a nice spirit. In shamanic terms, unfortunately, that's not always the case. I know I'm working on some difficult ground here. Sometimes there's many different reasons why spirit can actually decide to misbehave sometimes. It may be the use of a property has changed, something done on the property and previous owners are not always aware of that or recognise that, and there's a lot of spirit that sometimes are earthbound for numerous different reasons, and it's part of different beliefs that some people believe because of the lifestyle they've led on this earth plane that when they pass they're going to be reprimanded or punished, and that is a strong belief. So how do we actually go about doing that sort of cleansing and cleaning work? First of all, I think I must confess that when I first started doing shamanic work, I was a little bit too gun-ho, a little bit of a bull in the china shop. And I soon learnt my lessons by that perhaps it's not always good to rush in and then try and tackle things. It's best to sit back and tackle things before you go. So a lot of the time when we're actually asked to do any type of cleansing work, we use something called remote viewing or remote sensing. Remote sensing or remote viewing whichever we like to call it, is where the shaman goes, I want to put it as like a meditated state. We go into a different state of mind. And that state of mind, provided we've actually given a location, we can let our spirit actually travel to that location. Our body stays in the same place, we project our spirit to that location. And by being in that meditated state, we can actually try and investigate that location in a very safe way, because we're not there physically. So we can go to a location providing we got an idea of an area, a postcode or something like that to work to. We can go and see what we sense, how we sense. We work on all our senses, all our 6 senses. A lot of you know chakra work, letting your chakras talk to you, letting the energy around you talk to you. Do the hairs on the back of your neck stand up? Do you sense, or how do you feel in an environment? Do you feel this environment is safe, pleasant, uneasy? Once we've done the remote sensing, then we've probably got a good idea of what type of spiritual invention we're trying to actually tackle. And how do we go about working with that? I quite often get called into different places where there is a spirit that's perhaps misbehaving, should I say, in different ways, or not always misbehaving. Someone's spirit is not aware of that they are making an effect in a property. They may be just trying to get attention, or maybe trying to bring something to the fact that there is a spiritual presence there. And most people will probably, it's something there that's probably actually there to try and help them, but they're still unsettled by the fact that they've got a spiritual presence around them. And spirit are not always aware of that. So even when we're remote sensing and remote viewing, we try and actually see if we can find that spirit, and then it is mediation. First of all, it's actually trying to point out to that spirit that's actually causing any type of issues that they shouldn't be there, they shouldn't be causing issues. And tell him either to calm things down or they've got to move on. We quite often also work in a way where spirit don't always know they've passed. And that's quite an awkward one sometimes. Not all of us are going to be aware that the time that we no longer exist on his earth plane. And as we've all been taught, we will see a light appear, and hopefully there'll be loved ones on that light to actually welcome across to the other side. For most people that works. Unfortunately for some it doesn't. If you're not aware of your history family, your ancestors, how do you know who's in that light? Who's come to welcome you? How do you know that they're there to actually help you? How do you know that that's what you're supposed to do? So that is the work of the shaman, to actually try and be a mediator in that factor as well, to actually convince the spirit that they should be moving on, and there's nothing to be afraid of. By going to the light, they're going on their onward journey, and that's what we see it as. It's the onward journey. Nothing actually stops when we don't need this physical carcass anymore. We still move on in an energy form, in a spiritual form. And we go to the spirit world to experience something different, something else that we need to learn. If sometimes we can't do our cleansing or our eviction work by the remote work, then sometimes, unfortunately, we need to do a personal visit. And in personal visits we do very much similar, but in person. We walk round and we try and sense what spiritual presences are there, why they're there. What do they need, what do they want? Why are they making themselves aware to the people around? And then it's also, once again, the mediation work. Obviously, if anything, we try and do the gentlest first of all, ramping up each section of what we're working at to a slightly stronger way of working in shamanically. I suppose what I should cover first of all is any time we investigate a place that's got a presence where a spirit are perhaps causing a slight problem, there will also be a spiritual presence there that's not causing a problem. Each one of us has got guides and protectors. So any time we try to do any type of cleansing work, we are not doing a total cleanse. We're not wiping the slate totally clean, because that's probably the most dangerous thing to do. If you wipe a slate and get rid of every spirit that's around, you've left a void. And unfortunately what wants to come and fill that void is something that can't normally get through in other ways. So we also try and communicate with any positive spirits around. And we're asking the positive spirits around to assist us in actually helping anyone who does need assistance in moving on. Once we've tried to then do any type of communication and asking help, if we feel we've got to ramp it to the next stage, then we ask the positive spirits to step back, to move away for a little while. Just go and look around the shops for a minute, so to speak. That's when shamanically we then go into the next stages of spiritual work. And most of you here have probably been around where I brought in different spiritual tools, shamanic tools. We work with shamanic rattle, with drums. We work with the sage, there's a cleansing. And then we work with what I presented last time, the blessed ash, the holy ash. And that will always work on actually driving away and passing on spirit. So that is quite a fair part of what a shaman actually does as well. That's the very shortened version of what it goes into. But the rest of the time here, what I hope to do is, most of the time a shaman is perhaps sometimes misunderstood, or there's not a lot of information about for people to understand what a shaman does. So I would like the rest part, what time we've got left, try and do a question and answer time. So if anyone's got any questions on anything shamanic, I will do my very best to try and answer that. Please.
How important do you feel it is for people in the world today to reconnect with nature and to be aware of the spirit energy in everything?
Teachings from all over the world that nature is important. Nature is the guardian of the planet. You know, we're here and we're causing so many issues, but the planet's still got to survive. And if the planet doesn't survive, we don't survive. Short and simple as that. So for us to actually go out and actually recognise and try and work with the spirits of the planet is a very, very important part of the thing to do. To just do simple blessings, simple praises, and to offer a prayer to the land, offer a prayer to the crops, offer a prayer to the river, to the seas. We can only do so much. Unfortunately, we can't stop man doing what man wants to do. But there's a very, very famous Indian term one day that, you know, man actually works, and once man's cut down the last tree, taken the last fish out of the sea, and poisoned the last river, we will learn we can't eat money. Thank you very much. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Have you experienced very angry spirit that you can't clear from the house?
I've experienced very angry spirits, yes. I have been attacked in spiritual cleansings, and we've had very complicated work. Once again, it's being well protected when we go in and making sure we're strengthened, we've got the tools to go in with. We're called in to do a job, and we will try and see that job through no matter how long it takes. So it's being stubborn, persistent, and sometimes, in a way, we threaten. You know, if you don't decide to move on and don't behave yourself, this is the next tool we're going to use. Most of the time that works. I've never encountered anywhere that I've been to that we haven't been able to actually assist. No.
When you say we, are you talking about spirit help or physical people helping you?
Both, actually. Let's say it's earlier on in my talk that I must confess that I can be a bit gun-ho. I can be a bit sort of run forward and think about the consequences afterwards. I soon learnt with that sort of make sure you take backup with you, somebody, a physical another person with you when you go and do an investigation or a cleansing. It's always best for you to watch each other's backs. So I would recommend that any time anyone does do a cleansing, at least they've got someone else who is very spiritually aware with them that can actually assist them as well. Also, a lot of time we do call upon other spirits. If there's a positive spirit presence around, as well as a negative spirit presence around, we call upon that positive spirit presence to assist us. We also call upon our guides and our helpers. Our guides are positive ones. Thank you very much.
So, indigenous people, let's say in America, they are very used to do traps. For them, it's very natural to put traps to caught animals and all sorts of things. But it's very arguable if it's good to do a trap, for instance, to defend ourselves at home. Like it's very arguable that if we should go down that route of thinking about these things, that doing a trap, or like imagine you have a thief entering your place. Should we go for that? And in what way does that connect with shamanism?
Yes, I understand what you're saying. We don't actually ever trap spirit. Let's say we try and actually mediate to actually heal a situation. So where we've got a situation where we've got a spiritual presence that is causing some sort of problem, we always try and communicate in that way and actually make spirit aware that they are having an effect on the people. That effect they're not enjoying. It's not a positive effect, so please stop doing that. Where some are earthbound and don't know that they've got to go to the light or the tunnel, we try and assist them as much as we can in actually convincing them that that's where they should go. They've got a new home to go to. They've got a new place to go to. A place that's safe, comfortable, and there'll be no consequences, there'll be no reprimands. Unfortunately, a lot of teachings to tell people that sometimes if the lifestyle they've led, then they're going to suffer when they pass over. We try and convince spirit that that's not the case. So it's always trying to actually help the situation. We're there to help the people, but most of the time we're there to help spirit. We're there to assist spirit, and that's a good part of the job. Is actually, and then if we have to, we ramp up the tools that we use that technically make it uncomfortable for that spirit still to stay around. And if we make it as uncomfortable as possible, then that spirit will then move on. Does that answer the question?
Well, actually, I was focusing on physical things, not so much with spirits. Like, I was not talking about animals or spirits in general. I was talking about, like, for instance, a thief that could enter our place. Should we indeed plan some kind of traps?
That's going on a slightly different way. We can try and spiritually use many different tools to try and protect our home in many different ways. Unfortunately, when you're dealing with another human being, as you say, a burglar or someone who wants to come in, spiritually, we've not got that many tools that we can actually stop that happening. Unfortunately, it's a burglar alarm. I call the police. Yes.
Yeah, but for instance, a net, excuse me, a net, for instance, a net that just in cages, no? Because
You've got to be very, very careful when you actually protect yourself or your home. Anything you may do that actually could cause any injury or mental disturbance to that person, you could find yourself in, unfortunately, a deeper situation than the person that's causing the harm. So thank you very much. Does anyone else, please?
You said earlier that if you clear all the spirits out, then there's a void.
Yeah.
So my question is, has that ever happened to you? And how did you get out of that? You know, how did you?
No, because part of my training is, okay, once you've got it investigated and you've actually been aware that there's spiritual presences that are misbehaving, you're also aware there's spiritual presences are there to do good. So when you try to do the cleansing work, we've communicated with the good spirits, made them aware of what we're going to do, and all we're actually working is actually we're putting a positive energy in to actually disperse a negative energy. The protectors are our positive energy anyway, so we're not targeting those. They will also always be there, we've left them in place. All we're targeting is anything that's actually a negative energy. So what we're doing, we're getting rid of the negative spirits, or the spirits that are causing problems. The spirits that are actually there to assist, we leave in place. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Please.
Have you come across, I'll call it poltergeist type activity
Yeah.
within a home, and also is that caused by perhaps the energy of the person or people that are in the home? You know, sometimes they say that teenagers, their energy's a bit more volatile. Have you noticed that the so-called other spirit or being in that home is actually generated by the energy of the people within there, because it's something to do with their own imbalance perhaps?
The answer to that is yes. It's not necessarily the teenage energy. Most of the time you will find that people experiment. And because they've not been to a sanctuary like this, they don't not aware of the bounds of their experiment. My absolute hate is the Ouija. A lot of times when people dabble with Ouija boards and things like that, it's an open porthole. It's not a protected porthole. Everything we do in these sanctuaries is protected. We work under massive protection, from the sanctuary itself to the people who run the sanctuary, and make sure that you are all protected. If people are dabbling on trying to communicate with spirit, they're not aware that they've got to work under protection and under different rules. Obviously, if you throw open a doorway and invite anything in, the first thing that's going to want to rush through that doorway is a spirit that can't normally get through, because we've put protection there and we've put limits there. So that's when we get a presence brought in, because people aren't aware of what they're dabbling with. They think it's a bit of fun and they're going to dabble in some sort of spiritual exercise, but they're not aware enough that that is such a dangerous thing to do. It is like throwing open the doors of a jail and saying, please all come back to my place. That's the consequences, and once you've invited those in, it is not within most people's bounds to actually get them out again. And that's where we get invited in. Teenage energy, yes, teenage energy can be something that spirit can absorb and use. Any energy source, spirit can actually use, and it actually gives them more strength. The lights and etc. sometimes can play up in places that spirit being using it to actually draw energy. They can draw on teenage energy, but most of the time that'll only be positive spirits because we're working with positive energies. It's only when someone else has dabbled and actually drawn in a negative energy, and a negative energy can suck in that energy to make itself grow stronger, that's when that occurs. But most of the time it's because people have done something to actually open up a doorway. Yeah.
Can I ask as well?
Please.
Do you think people that really like gratuitously violent horror movies and things like that, have a member of the family that really likes and enjoys vampire movies and things that are quite, you're not just your normal Count Dracula thing, I'm talking really, really bad stuff that they actually enjoy. Do you think that watching that sort of material can bring in a negative?
Most people no, because it is there as a source of entertainment. It is, we're all different, you know, we all like different things, and some of us like thrill seeking, some will jump off cliffs with bungee ropes and etc. That's not for me at all, but I appreciate other people do it, and other people do go hang gliding. Not in a million years. There's a few people who actually get drawn in by that, and they do actually feed on that negative energy out of those things. And yes, potentially that can cause a problem. That's about as best I can answer that, I think. Thank you very much. I think we've got one more at the back there, please.
Have you personally come across a spirit that has been trapped on the earth plane?
Yes,
Yeah.
I've come across many.
And
Many.
presumably makes them angry.
I wouldn't say it always makes them angry, it makes them frustrated. Some aren't aware they've passed and can't understand why people don't talk to them, people don't recognise them anymore that way. Also work with a lot of people that are actually frightened to cross. They're frightened to go to the light because they don't recognise it as a light, and they don't recognise and some of the teachings we've been taught in the past, that if your lifestyle is a certain way, then certain teachings tell that, you know, you're going to be made to suffer for that when you go to the spirit realm. You're going to burn in hellfire. Very old-fashioned ways of thinking, but unfortunately it's still within the bounds of what we live in today. So there's a lot of spirit that are very dubious or frightened to actually go to the light and actually go through, because what they've previously been taught is they're going to actually be made to pay for the lifestyle they led. Does that answer the question? Thank you very much. I think we have time to hand back to Lawrence.
Hello. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much,
Enjoyed
Lawrence.
that.
Good.
Thank you. Very interesting. Interesting as well, phraseology, isn't it? Not picking you up, Michael, when we use the term trapped, we instantly think of a third party has put that on us. But actually, you've made your own trap by your belief system. So don't ever think, you know, that people are being trapped by something else, because at the end of the day it all comes from us. And if I don't want to go out that door today, I'm trapped in here. I'm not trapped by anything other than my belief if I don't want to go outside that front door today. So it's just interesting phraseology. Thank you. That was exciting.
Good. I know it was a very brief and quick one, but
No, it's good. Very good. Just for your notices coming up, this weekend we have our weekend with Stephen Trolland. That kicks off on Friday with private sittings of evidential sittings or spiritual assessments, your choice. Those are available on Friday afternoon. Saturday we have a workshop with Stephen, and Sunday he'll be here taking our divine service at 11 in the morning. Sunday week, the 13th, we have a special service, our remembrance service, and that's being taken by Elaine Bevan and guests. We will now hand over to the healers of the church to work your magic. we'll say a fond farewell to all those that have joined us on home, and a
Good.
big thank you
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
to Kevin, because that was really interesting and really engaging. Thank you, sir. Wonderful. Healers, over to you. Don't get killed in the stampede, will you?